Okay. Now a real treat here. Good morning, everybody. Today's 20 October 2003. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of World War II and World War I. In conjunction with the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress, we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in our country's military conflicts. So today I'm here at the museum along with Mary Barrer and Harry Ziegler, and we have the honor and the privilege of interviewing Anne Weinstein. Young Miss Weinstein was a girl in Poland during World War I. So we're going to talk to her about that and some other things. So nice to have you here, Anne.
Thank you.
Okay, now can you tell us where you were born and spell your name for us, too?
My name is Anne Weinstein, A-N-N-E-W-E-I-N, S-T-E-I-N, and I was born in Poland, Białystok, Poland.
And when was that?
That was November 22nd, 1909.
And what, in 1909, that's the year my father was born. What was your maiden name?
It was Greenblatt, but when my father came to this country, they changed it to just Green. So when I came to this country, my name was Green.
Greenblatt, and spell that for us, please.
Spell Greenblatt? G-R-E-E-N-B-L-A-T-T.
And tell us a little bit about your ancestry, too, about your father and mother and where they all came from.
Well, my mother's mother died when she was 9 years old, and she had two brothers, which she raised. At the age of 17 or 18, she went to work in a bakery and met my father. They both decided that they'll open their own bakery. They did, and they prospered. We had a beautiful home, I remember, and we had help with the children growing up while my mother helped my father in the bakery. Then the war broke out, and I don't know, they say that we had a shipment of flour coming on the train, and they sabotaged it by pouring kerosene in there. From then on, we became very poor. We had to move out from our house, and we lived in a very small apartment. At that time, we were already 6 children. My father and mother ended off with 9 children. I had 8 more brothers and sisters. Now we're only 3 left. Anyway, I remember we were so poor, we used to go to the cabinets and look for old stale bread, anything, so we could feed our mouths. And I remember one day I found a piece of dried up crust, and I thought it was a treasure. I brought it out and I said, look what I found, and we all shared a bit of it. I also remember my mother going to the cabinet and taking out a precious doodad to sell so she could buy a loaf of bread. She came home with a loaf of bread. We all sat around the table, and she began slicing it, and we all watched that each slice should be even. And then after we all got our slice, she sliced another one and handed it to my older brother, and she said, bring that to the man sitting on the street down below. That's real charity.
That was very generous, yes.
Isn't that touching?
Very touching.
Anne, can you describe a little bit about what you remember when you said the war? People aren't going to realize that was World War I, and how that...
We still had owned the bakery, and at that time during the First World War, but we weren't doing much because you couldn't. And I remember we all gathered when the bombs were flying over our heads, we were lying on the floor, and I remember my father cuddling us and saying, "Don't be afraid, everything is going to be all right." And it did turn out to be all right.
Was Poland neutral at that time?
I beg your pardon?
Was Poland neutral? Was it a neutral country?
Well, I was, to be honest with you, I was only 5 or 6 years old at that time. I don't remember if Poland was neutral. I don't believe so.
Poland was a victim.
A victim.
They were invaded.
But when there are so many things little bitsy pieces that you recall, you remember.
Can you remember about church, going to church?
The what, dear?
Going to church, can you remember?
Going to church, being Jewish. It was very bad for Jewish people there, even at that time, even in 1914. I remember during Easter time, my mother would keep us in the house. She'd say, "You can't go out playing today because it was Easter," and there was a lot of anti-Semitism there. I remember after the war going to school, walking to school. There were a bunch of people standing on the corner and talking, and I said, "Well, what happened?" Somebody threw in a hand grenade and killed a whole Jewish family, and nobody was apprehended. There was a lot of anti-Semitism there.
And this was Polish people?
Poland, yes, that was Poland. Do you want me to talk about emigrating?
Well, we would, yeah, Ann will get you there, but I wanted to ask, did you celebrate church in your home then? Did you celebrate?
Did we? Oh, yeah. Well, we celebrated holidays, and we always invited someone poor on Friday nights to share whatever we had with them after the war.
Were you able to go to a synagogue? Were you able to go to your...
Oh, yes, 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 yes. My father was able to make friends with everybody.
Now, did you speak Polish or Yiddish?
I spoke Polish and Yiddish. Whenever my mother had a little extra money after the war, she would give us special lessons. Like my older brother played the violin at a very early age, and she would send us to private school. She thought that we could learn a lot more there. I spoke Polish, I spoke Yiddish, I spoke Hebrew, I spoke Russian, and I spoke German. But I don't speak it now. I can read Polish, but I do speak a little Spanish.
Did you learn to cook a Seder meal in that era? To cook a Seder? To prepare a Seder meal?
Oh, yes. We observed all the holidays. Yes. And I remember sitting at the table with all the children. We were naturally still so very young, and we would play under the table and kick each other, and my father would be looking into the prayer book, and then he would hear commotions. All he had to do is just look up, and all of us sat quietly and behaved beautifully.
And after the war, were you able to attend service Friday night or Saturday at the temple?
I believe, from what I can recollect, that my parents were not temple goers, but they were observant Jewish people. They observed the different laws. Mm-hmm. But perhaps they didn't go because they had all the children to take care of.
Oh, of course.
They were, I was, during the war, I was of course late. There's so much to tell. There's so much. But my mother, she used to go to temple, and my father, I don't recall.
So there was religious freedom that you were able to attend the temple.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that I know of. Absolutely. Yes. Although they did desecrate the temple not far from us, but there was, perhaps it was because my father was able to make friends with everybody, Christians and Jews.
And how old were you when you left Poland?
I was 13 years old. First, my brother and my father emigrated. I had an uncle living here. We had managed to send him away because he had to go into the army and he didn't want to somehow, I don't know how, we managed to send him away prior to when my father and my brother were going. And he lived here for a number of years, and after the war, my father and brother left for the United States. They both worked, saved up enough money to send for 3 of the eldest children. My sister, Sarah, who was then 17, or 18, my other sister 16, and I was 13. We all came here. My father, my brother, and my other 2 sisters went to work, and I went to school. I was 13 years old then. 2 years later, my father died at the age of 41, and I had to quit school and go to work.
Where were you living in the United States?
In Chicago.
What part?
Northwest.
Near Austin or?
Near Humboldt Park.
Humboldt Park.
When my father died, we had to break up the home, and I had to quit school and go to work at the age of 15. I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and walk to work so I could save the dime car fare to have that extra dime to send to my mother and the 5 children who were still in Poland.
Was your home in Chicago different from your home in Poland when you left?
Definitely, we didn't have our mother. When my father died, we all had to go to different places. I longed for my mother. We tried to bring her over with the children, but we were not able to because none of us were citizens then. At that time, the immigration law was very strict. As a matter of fact, before they allowed you to come to the United States, you had to have a physical examination and an IQ examination. And they examined you from the eyes, from the top of your head to the tip of your toes, and they examined your IQ. They tell the story about this poor woman who was going to the United States, and they asked her, how many feet does an American horse have? And she thought, American horse, everything is so big in the United States. They have such good things there. If a European horse has four legs, then an American horse has 5 legs. They never allowed her in. You had to be mentally fit and physically fit at that time. Anyway, we tried to bring my mother and the 5 children over, but we couldn't because none of us were citizens, and my father died 2 months before he became a citizen. But a parent was allowed to come to a child. Since my brother was at that time 21, he asked for my mother to come over, and she thought she could perhaps bring over the children. She left the children in Poland with some friends or relatives. I don't know the exact thing. And she came here, and she was told they cannot come to anybody, to any brother or sister, unless they're a citizen. And you can't have them at that time the parent had to be a citizen also to bring over the 5 younger brothers and sisters. Well, she began going to all the clubs, all the organizations, and she pleaded her case. She said that she had not heard from her husband, and she had to come to the United States on her own and leave the 5 younger brothers and sisters there. And what is she going to do? And anyway, my oldest brother said that it was the act of Congress that caused my 5 brothers and sisters to be able to emigrate to the United States. So he told me.
And what year was that?
That was in 1929. I did not see my mother for 6 years, from the age of 13 to the age of 19. And my father, of course, was not there. We all lived in different places, but when my mother came, we all got together and stayed at one of my sisters who had then married. It was a hard life.
And what kind of house did you live in when you all got together? It must have been rather large.
Pardon me if I laugh. No. We slept on the floor, we slept in the kitchen, we slept wherever there was a little space. We stayed at my sister's house, who was then married, and she was going to have a baby. I had to quit school and go to work, of course, as soon as my father died. I seemed to be the only one that was able to earn a living. The others, my oldest brother, he aspired to be a teacher eventually. After many sacrifices, he would work during the day and go to school at night. And after many sacrifices, later in life, he was teaching at UCLA, and he wrote textbooks on accounting. I said, why did you take up accounting when you're such a romantic person? He said, because I thought that would earn me a better living. Like that.
Well, that's lovely.
Yeah. And my family has done, we worked hard, and we prospered. The offsprings of my sisters and brothers, not so much we, although I was earning enough of a living to support my mother and my 5 brothers and sisters. It seemed that the other ones, they wanted to, but they just weren't able to. But I had a very nice skin at that time, and they picked me up to sell cosmetics, and I traveled for them all over the country. It's an old company that is no more in existence.
What was the name of it?
Elmo. Elmo. E-L-M-O.
And you sold cold creams and powders?
I demonstrated cosmetics and went all over the country. I was in Colorado and California and St. Louis. But at the age of 23, my mother said, the children are now able to make a living, the younger ones. You get married. There is this gentleman that wants to marry you. Get married. I don't need your paycheck anymore. That's when I married at the age of 23. I thought I was an old maid.
And whom did you marry?
I married a very fine gentleman who I was married to him for 33 years when he died of cancer.
And were you able to continue your career traveling around the country when you
He
married?
was very old-fashioned, like my now husband. He did not want me to work. I wanted to continue selling cosmetics and helping people to live right, but he said, my wife isn't going to work.
Now, were you required to marry in the Jewish faith? Was that a requirement?
We went up to the rabbi study because I remember I went to look for a dress to get married in, and it was $4 more than what I had, and I was never able to buy the kind of a dress that I wished to marry. But then I decided, well, it's not that kind of a wedding anyway. We went up to the rabbi's study, and his wife was there. My mother was there, and she had married my father. My mother married my father's brother, who was a bachelor in the United States, and he was there, and my oldest brother. And I never knew what it meant to put on a white dress as a bride, but I had a wonderful husband then, and he must have picked out my now husband, because he's just as wonderful.
And where did you live in Chicago with your new husband?
He had some business to do in Oklahoma City, and we lived there for about 6 months. Then there was some offering in Seattle, so we went to Seattle. We stayed there for 8 years, and then we got in. He was doing very well. It was before the Columbia Basin was the Columbia. What is the name of the Cooley Dam was built.
Oh, the Cooley Dam.
And they had a lot of land there that they were selling, and he and his brother bought quite a number. I don't know how many thousands of acres he bought there, and they did very well selling that land. And so we were able to help members of the family who were not doing so well. And there was one sister who went to Los Angeles to start a new life because she wasn't in the right neighborhood in Chicago. So we helped them out to buy this bakery that we helped to establish. We did very well there. That's where I saw his poster,
Oh.
just to look at it.
And how did you learn to work in a bakery? That's a real art.
I was selling. I wasn't working I wasn't producing
Oh, you weren't in the
I
production.
was selling in the store. They had a store in the front. Uh-oh.
And how long?
Thank you.
How long did you work in the bakery?
8 years,
8 years.
without pay.
Oh, but your husband took care of
Oh,
you.
yes, he did.
And what section in Seattle did you live in?
What section?
By the lake, or?
We went to look for the house where we lived in, both my now husband and I couldn't find it. But it was near, on top of Lake Washington on the hill.
And you liked living in Seattle better than Chicago?
Yes, I liked I liked living in Seattle. We did well. We prospered, and we lived well. And we had 3 beautiful lilac trees in the backyard, and flowers.
And did you have any children?
I never had any children. I wanted to adopt children. But at that time, we were traveling a great deal, my late husband and I. And he said, remember, if you adopt a child, we won't be able to travel. I said, well, we can now afford to have help. But I was always an old-fashioned woman who wanted to always to accommodate her husband. Am I right?
Practically.
And did you ever return to Poland?
No, I never liked Poland. I didn't like what was, even as a child, I didn't like what was going on there. I didn't like it.
And where were you during World War II? In Seattle?
No, we were in Los Angeles in the bakery when the war broke out. And I went to enlist. I wanted to be a wave, but they found out that I work in a bakery, and they said that it's an essential industry, and we do not hire, and we do not take anybody who is in an essential industry, because the food had to be supplied to all the workers in the defense factories. So they wouldn't take me. And at that time, in 1941, I was already 30 years old. So they didn't take me.
So you remained in the bakery?
I remained in the bakery till 1948. Then we traveled extensively.
And where did you go?
South America.
Oh. And were there any countries there that impressed you?
I like America.
Oh.
I think there is so much to see in the United States. There is so much to see.
Oh, you're absolutely right about that.
There is Yellowstone, and there are the caves in New Mexico, and
Grand Canyon.
and the Grand Canyon, and
So you weren't too impressed with South America?
I learned how to speak a little Spanish, but it was interesting.
How long did you stay there?
6 months. We went to the major cities.
Did you visit the synagogues there?
No.
There are some beautiful ones.
No. I hate to put it on tape, but my late husband had studied to be a rabbi, but as he developed, he said that religion is the pardon me. Religion is the reason for all wars, for all the troubles. So he was he was a good human being, but he did not observe. No. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
And when did you move to Seattle? After the war?
You know, at my age, it's not really easy to remember everything.
You're remarkable, truly remarkable.
Wait a minute. When did we move to Seattle? About a year after we were married.
Uh-huh. And then you moved from Seattle down to Los Angeles.
To Los Angeles in 41. We stayed in Seattle. Let's see, we married in 33, and we moved to California in 1941 to help them out. There was a strike going on, and anyway, we moved and we got stuck in the bakery to help them out.
And your children were born there?
I never had any children,
right.
but I did have a lot of, God bless them, nephews and nieces, and they all would come to us whenever they ran away from home.
Oh, you were their home away from home.
Yes.
And when did you lose your husband?
In 1967. He was complaining, he wasn't feeling well, and for several days and a few weeks, and I said, you better go to the doctor or don't come back. Well, he went to the doctor, and the doctor admitted him in the hospital immediately. And a month later, he was gone of cancer.
Oh, how sad. And then when did you meet this fine gentleman?
This fellow I met 3.5 years later. My family wanted me to move out of, I lived in a beautiful house, and they said, you're isolated there. Why don't you move away? And I wasn't interested to move away. I had too many memories. But my members of the family were going to Murrieta Hot Springs, and my mother said, why don't I go with them? I said, what am I going to do there? I won't dance, I won't play cards, I won't drink. I was mourning. It was already more than 3 years after his death. Well, I went there, and they were tearing up the earth there. They were building condominiums, and it looked so happy, and I thought that would be a nice place for me to live. So I inquired from the hotel manager how I can buy one of the models. She says, I'll talk to my boss. And the next morning they looked me up, and she brought over this gentleman, and she says, I'd like you to meet. I said, Mr. Kahn, who was the owner of the project. She said, no, Mr. Weinstein.
Oh.
And then after we talked, and I told them my reasons for wanting to buy one of the model homes. She said, Mr. Kahn is following. So we all sat down. I never looked at Mr. Weinstein. He was sitting here. Mr. Kahn was sitting opposite. And after we talked about buying the model, he said it won't be ready for 2 years. I said, I'm in no hurry. I'll wait. So he said, why don't you let Mr. Weinstein show you around? I said, I'm not interested in building. I just want one of the model homes when they're ready to be sold. He said, well, if you're going to live here, wouldn't you like to see what's going to be here? I said, okay. So he took me around, and he's been around me ever.
Was it love at first sight?
It was, because he was asking me all sorts of questions when we stopped on the hill there, and he said, there's going to be a hotel, and there are going to be condominiums here, and there's going to be a 20-story building. He said, why don't you come and stay here for 2 weeks? And I thought he was using negative salesmanship. He says, but I said, I'm not interested in living here now. He said, but if you're going to live here, don't you want to see what's going to... Anyway, he said to me after a while, it's time for lunch. Would you like to have... I looked at him. I said, are you a married man? And I saw green eyes. And he said, we had coffee and something else, I don't remember. And he said he's coming into Los Angeles on Tuesday. Am I busy? I was, but I canceled it.
Very good. And how long were you dating before you married?
6 months.
Uh-huh.
But I didn't want to date anybody else. I had chances I did not want. I thought I'd never be. But he's just as bossy as my first husband.
Any man that says he's boss in his home will lie about anything.
And were you married in a Jewish ceremony?
We went to the rabbi also, but it was a different kind of a thing.
Uh-huh.
I was older, and it didn't bother me that I didn't have a white dress on and everything else that goes with me. I had my man.
Uh-huh.
And I tell him he was picked out by the one in...
It was your destiny.
Well, she has two, what do you call them, balls, you know, where they...
Well, when he died, I bought one for myself.
Uh-huh.
So she asked me, what do I do with that one? Should I use it? I said, let him get his own girl.
I remember when we had occasion when we were married to be at the cemetery where my late husband is buried. I said, come on, I'll introduce you. And I brought him up to the vault, and I said, I'm sure you're happy for me. I'm sure he is.
And how long have you two been married?
I thought it could never be, but it's going to be 33 years in March.
Oh, congratulations.
And I was married 33 years to my first husband. But I married him, I was just 60. And I said, 33 years, I won't even make 25. It's going to be 33.
And you look so young, you would never know it, really. They're both a handsome,
you.
very handsome couple.
Thank you.
And how long have you lived here in the valley?
About 20 years.
Yeah.
We had a market together. I think he told it to you. And the doctor, he developed a little heart trouble, and the doctor at Scripps told him to give it up. I pulled it off before.
It's okay now.
Yeah. Anything else I could tell you?
And where do you reside, in Palm Springs, or
When
where
the-
do you live? Where's your home?
Palm
What?
Springs.
In Palm
Oh,
Springs.
in Palm Springs.
We have
And
a place in
We have a place in Brentwood,
for the summer.
in Brentwood.
a condominium?
Yes. 2 bedrooms, isn't it?
Yeah.
2 bedrooms. Yeah, so we go away for the summer.
And are you the inspiration to your husband's poetry?
I believe that if I had not encouraged him to write, he still wouldn't have. I said, you have so much talent. Why don't you write? So he did. So
And that's how he started.
I think so. I think that's how you started the books.
Well,
And I leave him be when he goes into his room and write. I leave him be and with his thoughts and
Do
inspiration.
you have any hobbies yourself?
I used to paint, but our house is not equipped for me to. At the outside, it's too hot in the in the summer, and it's too. You can't. I still hope to go back, though.
And do you enjoy cooking for him?
Yes, I do. I enjoy entertaining. I enjoy cooking. I make the best cheesecake. And I love to have people over.
after for cheesecake.
But
Well, you really sound like you have a wonderful lifestyle, and you're both so young and energetic and vigorous. I think it's just marvelous. You're an inspiration.
you know, a lot of these people that give in to their age, a lot of them are not fighting enough. I think you have to fight adversity. You have to fight it. You know, I was told by our cantor in the temple here the story about, anyway, when things go bad, when things are good, enjoy it, because it too shall pass. And when things are bad, don't take it so to heart, because it too shall pass. And it does. All passes. When I look back at the years, how they have flown, it passes. Enjoy. And if you have a pain, don't give in to it. Fight it. Don't, I can't.
Oh, that's a wonderful philosophy.
I practice it. Let that be a lesson to you. Not yet, but eventually.
We'll remember that. Well, thank you very much, Anne.
My pleasure.